On Rafa Nadal, then, so this is I feel like his evolution has been very, very different. He's obviously, it seems like he's still tweaking. I know obviously Djokovic has been tweaking, but I feel like Djokovic is now at a stage where I feel like for the past year, maybe year and a half, 2 years, it's been, okay, this is actually working. Let's stick to this. And okay, we might make very small tweaks, but this is kind of now what the finished product, right, for what we want to have going forward.
It's been quite obvious what Djokovic is trying to work on.
Yeah.
It's one thing knowing what he's working on. It's another thing trying to stop it, I suppose. But yeah, you're right. With Nadal, it's been a little bit more subtle. I think their evolution has kind of flip-flopped. Actually, kind of comparing the two. Nadal had a very compact serve when he started, to the point that it was almost too rigid. And so a lot of him has been, or a lot of the work on his serve has been trying to relax into his serve. So he's kind of, the evolution has kind of gone the other way for Nadal, whereas Djokovic's was kind of too open and too kind of elasticy, which then meant kind of catapulting tennis balls down the other end or slapping them, as I say. Then Nadal has been the opposite, because he's so compact. He's having to really accelerate with his racket head through the ball, and it's been a bit forced. Is kind of the feeling, the overriding feeling I get from watching his serves when he first came on the tour.
Yeah, no, agreed. And also for people watching, there's a really good video on baseline tennis that Craig did on Rafa Nadal and the evolution. Do check it out. It's fantastic visualization from the graphics point of view as well, and obviously some great commentary. Do check that out as well. In terms of though the rest of, I just feel like, so I think we discussed that I'm a Rafa fan, so I feel like I've watched him for a long time, and I don't think he is at a stage where his serve is where he wants it to be. He's still tweaking it. I think, I mentioned to you that last year in 2021, he actually had, I think percentage-wise, the worst serving year that he'd had since the start of his career, which is, I know he's been making tweaks. And so, we mentioned about Djokovic in the process, and I wonder whether it's a process, but it just seems like there's always changes happening, and he's not quite where he wants to be. You mentioned about it being really compact and obviously quite rigid, and it does look that way when he's serving a lot of the time. It looks like he's very tight. Like he ball tosses up, and it just seems like he's gripping the racket harder than maybe others as well. How has he changed it? I mean, for good or bad throughout the years. I guess we can touch upon the take back first. We did that with Djokovic. How has that changed, and how has he tweaked it throughout the years? Because it feels like he's not just made one or two adjustments. It seems like he's made a number of adjustments throughout the years, almost to try and change that.
Yeah, he's been kind of his base has always been quite narrow, which is great, because it means that you're not rocking backwards. You actually can move up and out to the ball. But his take back has always been very, very just up and out. He's kind of thrown that ball with his bent arm, or placed it rather. I think that's the interesting thing about. I know we'll talk about the take back in a second, but the ball toss for me from Nadal has been the most obvious kind of just placing that ball. It's not a throw or a toss; it's a place, almost as if kind of the waiter kind of placing that ball where you want it. And he places that ball, and then his left arm comes up and up and over the ball. There's no kind of take back or inversion. The racket's almost already inverted. At no point does it drop towards the floor like you see now with Djokovic's. It's kind of, he relaxes that wrist and his racket head points towards the floor. That means it's relaxed and ready to crack up through the ball. Whereas Nadal, when he first came on the tour, everything was here, kind of rifle position, arms and elbows quite close. Place that ball up, racket comes up and over, which is great for spin, right? Because you're having to manipulate your racket over and around the ball. But what he's tried to work on is kind of that, again, relaxing from that position, kind of actually elongating his take back so he can get a bit more momentum into his swing. It's also enabled him to hit a flatter ball. If you're really tense and you're kind of white knuckle gripping the racket, then it's going to be hard for you to rotate and open your palm. Sorry, my camera's the other way around. So open your palm towards the ball, kind of getting what I call getting your thumb around, kind of in this pronation. If you can only do that if you're relaxed, right? If you're gripping the racket really hard, it's going to feel very forced to get your thumb around, and that's what you need to hit a flat ball. If you're really gripping that racket, you're going to kind of almost like scooping over the ball, which is great for spin, which is why he's always had a high first serve percentage, because he plays with such margin. But in terms of getting miles per hour through the court, Hawkeye did a great graphic a while ago, which I've always found really useful. And it's kind of tracking his serve speeds after it hits the court. So kind of before he started working with Moya, first, they found two first serves that were kind of similar trajectory, exactly the same speed off the racket. But but before he worked with Moya, it would bounce and then kick up, kind of, but it's a first serve, so it's not a deliberate kick. This would be an attempted flat serve towards the tee. But because he had this tight grip, he was, putting more spin on it than necessarily he needed to. So the ball was actually kind of bouncing up towards the player's kind of hitting zone. And because it had spin on it, it was losing speed through the surface. But by kind of relaxing his racket, which he's trying to do now, pointing his racket head towards the floor, that means there's a bit more lag in the racket head. So when he comes up to contact, he can rotate his thumb around, really get a flat serve, almost with no spin on the ball, right? If you want to hit a flat serve, the ball doesn't want to have spin. For that kind of serve, spin will kill speed. You want to get your racket straight through the back of the ball and travel like a dart, with no variation or deviation. It just has to go. That's going to maintain its speed then through the surface. And that's what Moyes brought to his game. And I think it needed someone to come in, kind of watch his game and go, right, we need to make this tweak, because you've got great accuracy on your serve. But because when you serve T, it's going to come in towards the player's body because it's got spin on it. We need to try and actually get rid of that spin to keep the speed through the surface, and also to try and stop that ball from moving in towards your players, towards your opponent. So I think in our video, we kind of picked on the juice side and his wide serve, trying to flatten that out, because obviously if he manages to hit that flatter, then it'll continue to move away from his opponent, rather than a lefty from the juice side serving wide, it will just come in. So, and it's been really obvious to see that he's gained confidence in that serve. He hits it more, and that's been a telltale sign that he's happy with it and it's working. So yeah, his serve has vastly improved, and it's been the key to his game. Well, in 2017, he had a great year in terms of serve stats, and that was just after he started working with Moya. So yeah, it worked then. I think he's kind of had a few changes since, because it's always a balancing act, right? Between being compact's great, but then you lose a bit of power, but then you do get a bit more consistency. If you're over relaxed, then, I kind of use like a slingshot analogy. You get more power, but then you lose control. So it's that kind of balancing act between, and I think Nadal's kind of flip-flopping between the two. But it's nice that he's got that in his locker. He knows if he wants to be a bit more loose, he can kind of relax that wrist, relax those shoulders, maybe come up and around the ball a little bit more. So yeah, he's got different sides to his game, and I think he's still trying to find the balancing act.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely looks like he's still trying to find exactly what works for him. A bit of a identity crisis on the serve at the moment, but yeah, we'll see how that goes. What about in terms of, I guess, the elbow changes for him in terms of, I guess, not just his preparation and loading phase as well. Has he changed his elbow at all? Is it more out? You said it's obviously very compact when he first started. Has that now come out a bit more, or is it still tucked in?
Yeah, so the difference that we kind of spotted in our video was, if your kind of arm is out like this when you serve, because he wouldn't bring his racket kind of past his body, kind of past his back leg. Everything was out in front of him. Imagine you're setting up to serve and you're facing the side fence. Everything was in front of him. At no point did that racket come behind him. So he's trying to work on that a little bit. And with that, he's then being able to get power. He's then going shoulder over shoulder. We always think about, or when I coach players that that go shoulder around shoulder. Rather than shoulder over shoulder. Imagine doing like a cartwheel. If you do a good cartwheel, you'll go left hand over right hand, or for Rafa, it would be left hand over right hand, shoulder over shoulder with your legs kind of going over your hands. Whereas if you do a bad cartwheel, your hands will be here and your feet will go around you rather than over the top of you. So that's kind of something that's helped Rafa, because previously with his hands out in front of him, in order to hit that ball, he'd have to go around the ball. So that would be shoulder around shoulder. Now he's getting his elbow back a little bit more relaxed. He can now go shoulder over shoulder. And that's much more compact. And it's also saving his elbow because he's doing less kind of around it, which would obviously impact in here. So again, it's efficiency, it's injury prevention. You know, these two players that we're talking about, you know, coming towards the end of their careers, they want to try and play for as long as they can. So injury prevention and efficiency is high on these guys' agendas.
Yeah, no, very well said. And that makes a lot of sense. I guess in terms of, you said about going shoulder over shoulder as well. I'm assuming that in terms of utilizing your height more as well, that helps, doesn't it? Rather than going around the ball. Am I correct in thinking that? Because obviously, if I'm thinking about it from a point of view of where the ball's being struck, I guess you've got, well, one, a bit more control, but also a lot more margin for error as well. Am I correct in thinking that, or is that just more a mechanical thing?
Yeah, no, you're so right. If you kind of imagine a shelf which is just out of reach, when you reach for it, you reach upwards, you don't kind of dip your head and reach down. So if you're going shoulder over shoulder, you'll get more height because the ball will be above you rather than out to the side of you. So I realize I'm moving all over the place. But yeah, you're right. You're right. And the higher you can contact the ball, the more margin for error you have. Obviously, a majority of the players will have to hit with spin, because if you hit kind of directly down, a direct flat shot, there's only so much net clearance you need. So even if you hit a flat ball, it's got to have a bit of spin to get margin for error. But yeah, for sure it would help with first serve percentage.
That makes a lot of sense. What are tweaks in terms of for Rafa then? Obviously, I know you cited some of that in the video as well, of course. But in terms of other tweaks that he's made, what have you noticed, especially I guess recently as well? And do you think there's some tweaks that he's made that might be detrimental as well going forward?
That's a good question. I think because his take back has changed ever so slightly, he's letting go of the ball kind of more at eye height, which gives him more time to load, because he's letting go of the ball sooner. He can then duck and tuck sooner. If you let go of the ball quite late, then after releasing the ball, then you've got to tuck. Whereas if you let go of the ball earlier, then you can tuck and then load a little bit longer. So I think although that's good for technique, it's going to put more load on his lower body. It'd be interesting to see how his knees hold up. I'm really looking forward to watching Rafa over the next few weeks. Obviously, he's got a great opportunity. My expectations of how he's going to play aren't too high, but I think it's also important to remember that in terms of like off-season work, I know the off-season in tennis is ridiculous. What was it? The shortest it's ever been this year with kind of the exhibition that Murray was playing in Dubai. I think it was like a week and a half between officially the end of the season and the start of the season. So players don't have a lot of time to work on their game, but doing it during the season, if they're injury free, is almost impossible. So it'll be interesting to see if anything's happened. And actually, I wouldn't be surprised if you obviously mentioned Nadal's stats last year, that he used that year as a bit of a free year to kind of work on things. It was obviously a bit of a strange year, but I think he was working on. He may have subconsciously been working on a few things and kind of took it as a bit of a free hit last year. A long kind of training season. for him to kind of reassess his game. But yeah, Australian Open is the time when we see what players have been working on in the off season and they start to show their hand.
No, that's very well said. Very well said. In terms of actually, I forgot to ask as well that people talk about obviously the choke position and also the specific type of serve that people have is kind of completely gone out of my mind. But in terms of I think it's like platform.
Yeah,
there's different types of obviously serves, and
there's platform and pinpoint. Yeah,
correct. Yeah. So in terms of for Djokovic and Nadal, what just for people at home, just for their understanding as well, what type of serve do they utilize at the moment in terms of if you're categorizing it in terms of that?
So they both start quite narrow with their base, or they certainly do now. But both of them drag their foot up. Well, Nadal will drag his back foot up to join his front foot to become a pinpoint. And Djokovic does drag, but not so much. It's more of a step. But the pinpoint stance, which is obviously both of them are different to Federer, who will do a platform stance. The pinpoint kind of allows a bit more hip over the baseline, and I know saying that's a little bit controversial for coaches because people say kind of leaning into the court with your hip then kind of means, but if you throw the ball toss out in front of you, you time everything right, then leaning into the court is kind of a byproduct. So consciously trying to do something that shouldn't be conscious, it should be natural, is kind of one of those things you look at it and you go, that's what they do, but they're not doing it consciously. It's a byproduct of a good ball toss and good weight transfer. So both have pros and cons. You have to be strong to do a platform stance, jumping with your legs kind of slightly wider apart, one set further in front than the other. But it works for Federer. And he's got obviously a fantastic serve. And talking of the top three, his kind of serve has evolved the least, which is testament to how good it is.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why we didn't even include it in the video, because I just knew that even with my untrained analytical eye, that it's barely changed, and if it has, it's very, very small adjustments. But his platform stance, obviously, definitely the famous stance that a lot of people try and, I guess, copy as well. But yeah, just interesting from a more general and basic point of view to understand exactly what type of stance these guys adopt.
I guess the key thing is if you have a platform stance, then you set your feet up how you want to jump into the ball. So there's less room for error in that regard, because I know my front foot is here, I know my back foot is here, I'm going to throw the ball up and then I'm going to jump from this position. With a pinpoint, when you have to drag your foot up to join your front foot, that's when there can be room for error. I've seen lots of players will drag their back foot up and actually they'll bring it around too much, and then that can mean that their hips are too far forward and then they over rotate, so they fall away from the court. So it's adding an extra thing to think about. If you're throwing that ball in front of you and then dragging your back foot towards your other foot, you've got to be really conscious of where you place that back foot, because then obviously you push off from that position. And if your back foot's too far around, you're going to end up being too square to the court or too far behind you, and you're going to have to over rotate to hit that shot. So I guess that's one pro for having a platform stance, is you're going to be jumping from that position. So, but yeah, it's interesting. There's so many different kind of intricacies to look at during the serve. And yeah, I definitely recommend, if you are interested in the serve, which hopefully you are watching this, Dr. Mark Kovacs has done some really interesting research on the serve, and he's kind of a pioneer in serve biomechanics. So if you are interested, do check him out.
Well, I definitely will do. To be fair, definitely will do. Out of interest, is just more for my intrigue. What stance do you use then?
Pinpoint. But it was actually pointed out to me that, and this is hard. This is a hard thing to do. I thought I was doing it right, but when I slide my right foot up to join my left foot, my right foot was overtaking my left.
Okay.
Whereas
Yeah.
really you should, if you kind of imagine your left foot, when your right foot joins you, your kind of toe should be in line with the sole. Whereas
Yeah.
I was sliding my right foot up and it was overtaking my left. So I was kind of already facing into the court. So I was too far around. So yeah, it's really, and then that obviously affected my serve, because obviously your feet are connected to your hips are connected to your shoulders. So if my back foot's too far around, then my shoulders are also too far around, and that meant that I was serving around the ball rather than over. So this is why players have quite a narrow stance, or at least when they slide their feet up together, their feet are narrow to allow them to go to do that cartwheel rather than around the ball. So where you load from and how you load off the floor is really, really important.
Yeah, no, agreed. I think I've got a pinpoint stance as well, but it's interesting. It's interesting. I might send you a video over later.
Yeah, do.
You can have a look. But yeah, no, thank you, Craig. I really appreciate it. Is there anything you want to touch upon that we haven't covered that you think is useful?
No, I guess, yeah, I think it's, I mean, I love studying the serve. I think it's, there are some key fundamentals that every player kind of gets into. But the fact that these guys have got two very different kind of serve mechanics, yet they're just as good. Find something that works for you. Yeah, the big thing with Djokovic is I think his serve wasn't great when he started. And to see the changes that he's made is testament to the marginal gains that he's willing to make. And yeah, you can improve your serve so much, even at the top of the game, right? I think when he came on tour with his serve in 2005 or 2007, he was kind of ranked 57 in terms of serve stats. Yeah, 2005, when he finished the year kind of 57th in terms of serve stats. He made these changes, these small changes with relaxing his wrist, making more compact take back. And then by 2009, I think he was 21 in the world. Or 2012, he was then up to 9. And it just goes to show, by making a tiny technical difference, well, obviously I'm making a massive leap there. Obviously he became a much better tennis player and gained a lot of experience, and changed his diet and all sorts of other things. But yeah, that one thing certainly was a small change that helped him make massive gains.
No, agreed. And I think there's actually, he is 18th in the all-time list for highest percentage of service games won, actually. I think something around 80, I want to say 80%, 85% actually, I think it is, which is obviously really impressive and underrated, as we said at the start of the video as well, that clearly it's not something that we have normally. You normally think of him as returning Mr. Elastic, splits, fantastic backhand down the line, obviously, really solid, rock solid both sides, and just, fantastic shot tolerance. But he's definitely evolved into something, a different kind of beast for sure, and that's why he is where he is. Thank you very much, Craig. I do appreciate it. Do you want to shout out your baseline tennis and anything else that you're working on that people might be interested in?
Yeah, of course. So check out Baseline Tennis. We're on YouTube as well as socials. So yeah, we've got lots of videos. I think we're up 91 videos. Our latest one is on actually the slice in tennis, and how it's Ashley Barty and Berrettini. Actually, it was my own voice, my own bit of work. Obviously, looking at how the slice has evolved and how it's not just a defensive shot, and how these two kind of have reinvented the slice. It's really interesting. Something you think it's just a defensive shot. It's actually how they use it as kind of a counter-punching play. So that's my interpretation on how these two players use it. So yeah, check it out, Baseline Tennis on YouTube and socials.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, I saw that actually. Really interesting, for sure.
Thanks.
And yeah, but yeah, that was really good. Cool. Thank you very much, Craig. I do appreciate it, guys. Please do remember to like the video if you don't mind, and subscribe to the channel if you're interested to see more content like this. And of course, do check out Baseline Tennis as well. Some fantastic videos, as Craig just mentioned. Of course, thank you. Stay safe and well, and we'll see you on the next video. Thank you very much.